Red meat is killing you. You must stop eating red meat immediately. Hey, this is Rich. This is fat loss, success, motivation, positive habit building, and other awesome fitness stuff for men. I have no idea where to look with this camera. I'm either looking here or here or here. I'm gonna look about here, I think, because that seems like it seems to be the perfect place. But today, as you probably have guessed from the title, I want to talk about red meat and basically the scaremongering that seems to be happening around this particular type of food, right? So back, I would say around about 2015, when I was starting to get really geeky with the nutritional side of my learning, there was a big hoo-ha in the nutritional world regarding the WHO, so the World Health Organization, and their stance on red meat and processed meat. So back in 2015, they categorized processed meat as a group 1 carcinogen, and I believe they categorized red meat as a group 2A carcinogen. So what that basically means, a carcinogen is a substance or a thing that basically creates cancer in your body. So if we consider things like smoking or handling plutonium, these are group 1 carcinogens, right? So they're likely to give it to you. And processed meat was categorized in that same category as things like smoking cigarettes and handling plutonium, right? This came about, and obviously around the time as well, there was a big resurgence where there was a big upheaval of the vegan-based community and the plant-based community with their food, right? And things like Netflix documentaries were coming out, What the Health, and recently we've had the Game Changers, right? And so the evidence that was presented with the studies that were shown, it was almost like, well, having a look at the data, we've studied 100,000 people plus, and the real clear thing that we've seen from these studies is that yes, red meat equals cancer, right? And that was the kind of the tagline. However, what the WHO said was that red meat, okay, so when we're going to talk about red meat today, which is basically things like lamb, beef, and then processed meat, which is basically the storing or the adding to red meat to help with the shelf life, right? So things like bacon, like salting, curing, that kind of thing, sausages as well, ham, that kind of thing, right? So red meat and processed meat, two different things. What they found was that red meat, there was an association with cancer, right? Particularly, I think it was colon cancer. So what does that mean? What does it actually mean, association? So association means that there is a link between cancer and red meat. It doesn't mean that red meat causes cancer, right? So the limitations in nutrition are the fact that it's really, really difficult to pinpoint and pick out one particular food or food group as the causation of a plethora of health problems, right? If you were to like track everything that you ate and everything that you drank over the course of 30 years, right? How would you know that it was this thing that was causing it? There could be so many factors, right? And this is the problem with these kind of epidemiological studies, right? They're only there to look at patterns. It's there to kind of like probe and prod and say, okay, well, this is going to lead us down a new avenue of research. So one of the easiest ways to get this across is just to say, okay, so the research is showing that 100,000 plus people ate red meat and they got cancer. Okay, well, let's look at other things that happen. So in the summer, ice cream sales increase, right? Also in the summer, burglaries increase. Does that mean that the increase in ice cream sales causes more burglaries? This is the problem. We do not know that the correlation is the reason. The correlation is the causation. It's very, very difficult to say that one thing causes the other without having a look at all of the variables, right? The people in this study, how do we know that they didn't get enough sleep per night? How do we know that they weren't stressed? How do we know they didn't smoke? How do we know they weren't exercising enough? How do we know they weren't moving enough? How do we know they weren't eating enough fruits and vegetables? How do we know that they weren't getting enough fiber? How do we know that they're not getting enough micronutrition? They're not drinking enough water? There are so many different factors at play that we cannot say for certain that X is Y, right? When you're looking at the evidence and you're seeing these things come out like eggs cause cancer or red meat causes cancer, you need to be objective about it and say, well, is this the case, or is there something that's going on under the radar, right, that I need to be aware of? So don't be afraid that something is bad for you. Like if you generally, for the most point, follow a decent diet, right? And this isn't to knock vegans, by the way. Like I have many vegan friends that follow it. I'm more than supportive of them, right? I think it's cool. If you're doing it for ethical reasons, great. But I don't necessarily think you need to go to one if you're concerned about your health. I don't think there's enough evidence out there to suggest that a vegan or plant-based diet is better for you, right? What I will say is that you should all be following a plant-based diet. End of discussion. Everyone should have ample plants, i.e. fruits and vegetables, in your diet. It's as simple as that. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that you don't have to have some form of meat. And it can be white meat, so like chicken, it could be fish, could be some lean animal sources, right? Dairy, absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think if you've got that balance, then you're going to be ahead of 90% of the people that are living currently in the Western world, right? So we have the standard American diet or the standard Western diet, and most of the research is comparing that type of diet, which is, you know, heavily refined carbohydrates for the most part, McDonald's, takeaways, as opposed to like looking at healthy, plant-based with meat-based foods, right? If you go from the crappy standard Western diet and you just ate more fruits and vegetables and leaner meats, like you're going to fix most of your problems anyway. You're going to have probably better health markers, more nutrition, more vitamins, minerals, and you'll probably feel better for it as well, right? So you can definitely have a really healthy diet without having to not include things like red meat and the occasional bit of processed meat, right? So what are my recommendations then? What do I think is a really good place to live in, right? So in terms of processed meat, I think to be on the safe side, I've seen both sides of the argument. I've seen you can have it liberally as much as you want, or you should completely remove it. I'm somewhere in the middle. Like again, I follow a flexible approach to dieting where I think that if you just exclude certain foods, it's just going to cause problems down the line and you'll just get really regretful and angry that the fact you can't have them. Aside from things like allergies or intolerances, like that's a different category in itself. But if you enjoy the occasional bacon sandwich on the weekend, enjoy the occasional bacon sandwich on the weekend, right? But if you're having it every day, I would probably avoid that just to cover yourself, right? Maybe a couple of times a week maximum is a good recommendation. In terms of red meat, we don't really have any concrete evidence to say that you should not have it every day or you should completely remove it. There's nothing out there to suggest one way or the other. So for me personally, what I recommend is a couple of times a week, a few times a week is absolutely fine. Try and go for like good quality sources if you can. Leaner ones the better, especially those that are trying to lose fat. So leaner cuts of beef, leaner steaks, leaner burgers, I think is going to suit you long term anyway, right? It's just going to help you with your body composition, and that's why you're here, is to help you drop fat. So that is what I recommend. If you would like more help with this, if you would like some more insights into nutrition and how you can basically instill it into your own life, then head to the link below. I've got a 6-week Fat Loss Accelerator course that helps you with all this stuff, and it helps you drop 5 to 10% of your body weight in 6 weeks. Other than that, I will speak to you in the next one.